So recently I picked up the ROG Ally, which is essentially a handheld gaming PC, and I've played it pretty much everywhere, from my couch to my patio, at work, and even when driving home from work. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Okay, so maybe I haven't used it in my car. I promise I haven't, and you shouldn't either. But there are actually a ton of uses for this. And I've mentioned before how I tend to use my Nintendo Switch nightly as a way to catch up on gaming while cooking or watching TV with my girlfriend after work. The thing is, to me, in my head, those games that I'm playing almost don't seem real. Like, I don't know how to explain it other than they just aren't the main games that I'm playing. It's almost like a real life video game playing side quest, if that makes sense. So this ROG Ally is great because I can actually pick up where I left off on my PC. Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Grason, this is Tech With Me, and this ROG Ally, Asus's new handheld gaming PC, is kind of cool. So what makes it so great? Well, it's got a 1080p display, that's right, full HD for this bad boy, and a 120 hertz refresh rate, which is actually unheard of in a handheld gaming PC. Another cool thing that I really like about this ROG Ally is that it runs a full version of Windows 11 Home, whereas other consoles like the Steam Deck run Linux-based software. It's SteamOS, but it's based off of Linux. This is Windows 11, which means it really is essentially just a handheld Windows computer. It's almost like a Microsoft Surface if you strap the Xbox controller on either end, which is kind of sweet. Packed inside is 16 gigs of LP DDR5 memory and a 512 gig NVMe to store all of your games. And when I was looking up the specs, I was kind of surprised to see that it was 16 gigs. Now, don't get me wrong, 16 gigs is the bare minimum I would expect in a gaming PC, but because this was handheld, I expected it to be like 8 or 12. So we're getting more. It also uses the AMD Z1 APU processor to power itself. That's right, it doesn't have a graphics card. Well, it kind of does. An APU is a CPU and a graphics processor combined into one rather than two separate units. And sometimes they're great. Back when I was coming up in the PC community, a lot of people would use these for budget gaming PCs, and now they're being put to great use in handheld gaming PCs. And suffice to say, for my uses so far, it works pretty well. The thing is, we live in a world where the handheld gaming experience has always been placed on the back end. It was expected that it would be a subpar or a lower end experience, but that is no longer true with consoles like the ROG Ally or the Steam Deck on the market. And the thing is, you can't really blame the developers of the past because until now, it's never truly been possible. But finally, the future is here. Don't get me wrong, I loved my DS, my DS Lite, my PSP, and my PS Vita, but the fact is that until the Nintendo Switch released, there was never a truly powerful handheld console. That's not to say that the Nintendo Switch is super powerful, because it's really, well, not. And after 6 years, it's almost time for an upgrade. And they're gonna have to do a lot with consoles like the ROG Ally and the Steam Deck out. As a matter of fact, I have a video about that uploaded as well, if you want to watch it. But that is beside the point, guys. The Nintendo Switch was the first handheld console that I ever laid my hands on that I felt did not provide a completely gimped gaming experience. Your Nintendo first-party games ran great on it, handheld or docked. And there were even some third-party games, some really legendary ones like The Witcher 3 or Skyrim, that you could play on it just like a PC or a console, and it was great. And then Gabe Newell, the god of PC gaming, he said, "Let there be light," and the Steam Deck was created. Now, it was not the first handheld gaming PC, but it changed the world for devices like this because it did two things. It was the first reliable one, and it was the first affordable one. I mean, the base model Steam Deck runs only $400. That is super cheap for what it is. But there are some core differences between the Steam Deck and this ROG Ally. So what do you gain from the Steam Deck to this, and what do you lose? Well, for starters, the Steam Deck also uses an AMD APU to run it, but it only has a 60 Hz display and a 720p resolution to that display, versus the ROG Ally, which has 1080p 120. And like I was saying earlier, the Steam Deck runs off of a version of Linux made for it. Now, that doesn't mean that you're limited to what you can do per se, but it can be a little bit harder to do those things. And because this Asus console runs Windows 11 Home, that means it's not only more familiar, but probably easier to find workarounds and ways to get things running if they don't want to, because Windows is what we're used to. There's tons of information on Windows online, and there is more about the Steam Deck now that it's been around for a while, but I do think Windows is better in this circumstance, at least for usability and figuring things out. In my time using the ROG Ally, I have played Steam games, Game Pass games, and yes, for the people who asked me on TikTok before this video was ever even created, it can run Fortnite. Now, anytime we're talking about handheld consoles, whether it's the Steam Deck or the Asus ROG Ally, I think it's fair to say that you should set your expectations accordingly. This isn't a full gaming PC with an i9 and a 3090 in it, or a 4090 in it, or a Ryzen 9, or whatever you want to spec it out at. This is a handheld console, and you should expect handheld performance, which means you're probably not going to get current gen PS5 games running at 1080p 120. Now, you might be able to get 1080p 60 on low settings. You might have to drop it down to 720. You are going to have to make sacrifices, but the fact that you can take it on the go, and the fact that this display actually looks pretty darn good at 720p due to its size, means that you're not going to have to suffer a whole lot. I think it's worth the experience. But with that being said, right, having the ability to play at 1080p and higher frame rates on games that will allow it is super awesome. Not being limited because most games you can't play at that, but the fact that I can boot up Stardew Valley or Skyrim, or even some older games like Persona 4 Golden, and have a fantastic gaming experience at 1080p is awesome, especially when we're talking about a handheld console like this. Now, unfortunately, the ROG Ally's silent mode is what they call it. That's their low power draw mode. Has not had the best performance, especially not compared to the Steam Deck, which performs pretty well at these low power modes. That means I've mostly used performance mode and overdrive mode, which means my battery life has suffered a little bit. Being completely honest, I have not gotten more than 2.5 to 3 hours of battery life out of this thing since I started using it. But for me, that's okay, because like I said, I use this thing mainly at night after I get off of work, or when I'm done working on the channel, or whatever it is I did that day on my couch. I'm 2 feet from an outlet and I can plug it in and power it at all times. It really works well for my use case. But if you're going to be using it as someone who is traveling, or taking it to school to play during lunch, or to work during breaks, battery life may be a concern. Now, if you're only playing for 30 minutes to an hour at a time, you will probably be fine if it is fully charged. If you're using it 30 minutes to an hour at a time throughout the day, without having a place to put it on the charger for a little bit in between, your experience might not be as great as mine. But overall, I have really enjoyed the ROG Ally. The fact that I can move from my gaming PC over to my couch and back again throughout the week has made my gaming experience and my free time a lot more fun. I don't feel like I'm losing time for my hobbies because of the limited amount of time that I have. I don't have to pick and choose what I want to do as often. and I don't have to feel bad about choosing one over the other. I really have enjoyed my ROG Ally. Now, the question is, for $700, is the ROG Ally worth it over the Steam Deck, which starts at only $400? Well, I think that that's probably a question you are going to have to ask for yourself. But for me, I haven't regretted my purchase even a little. Anyway, that's a little bit about the ROG Ally. I've really enjoyed my purchase. I think that's very obvious from this review. I wouldn't really call it a review, but maybe it's very obvious from my first thoughts and my first few weeks with it. What do you guys think about the ROG Ally? Are y'all more of a Steam Deck fan? Do y'all like this? Do you think it has potential? Maybe you're waiting for second generation. Let me know in the comments down below. As always, I'd really like to hear from you guys. I love talking to you guys, and I want to build this tech community with y'all. Thank you guys very kindly for watching. My name is Grayson, and this has been Tech with me.